Welcome to Brainthropology. This portion of our podcast is about mindfulness meditation, and we believe it is important to practice mindfulness every day. I'm really honored that you're here joining us in this podcast today. Thanks.
Welcome to Brainthropology. In this episode, Dr. Barbaranne Branca will be discussing the window of tolerance, and this episode is a companion to our previous episode.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you today to this lecture on the window of tolerance. You've probably not heard of the window of tolerance. It's a very useful tool to help us assess our level of alertness or to help our clients assess their levels of alertness. Sometimes we are very focused and attentive. Sometimes we're not. We're in a fog or we feel sleepy. Scientists call this our level of arousal, which has nothing to do with sexiness. It just has to do with a level of alertness or stupor. Our arousal level fluctuates continuously, and we constantly self-correct. However, sometimes we get out of the normal ups and downs. We can become over-aroused or overstimulated, or we can be under-aroused, and at either of those times, we can have trouble responding. Understanding the concept of the window of tolerance helps us to deal with times that we feel overwhelmed by increasing our awareness of the level of arousal and how to deal with that when we're very stressed. So if you just take a second just to reflect, you could close your eyes or gaze downward. Bring your attention to your body and your mind. What is the state of your body and mind today, right now? Are you keyed up, raring to go? Are you perhaps a bit tired today? Is your mind alert? Is it clicking? Is it revved up? Or is perhaps this a day where your mind is dull and missing cues? If you just think of a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being low energy and 5 being high energy, what's your level of energy right now? So open your eyes. Emotional ups and downs are normal. We usually manage to stay on track and navigate stressors, sometimes with ease, other times it's more difficult. What can we do, however, when our emotional ups and downs lead to significant distress? When our emotions interfere with our functioning and affect our ability to relate to others, to do our jobs, to find enjoyment. And once we recognize that we're overstressed, what can we do about it? So, the window of tolerance is a tool that will help you to recognize when you're significantly emotionally dysregulated and will offer useful ideas to bring you back to regulated emotional functioning. If you can imagine a rectangle, a box, that would represent the window of tolerance. And if you're in the window of tolerance, you're able to feel safe. You can discuss comfortable and uncomfortable topics, and you're able to learn. Your cognition is online. Dr. David Trelevin has done extensive research into trauma-sensitive mindfulness. His book, Trauma-Sensitive Mindfulness, is a key work on understanding the window of tolerance. He defined the window of tolerance as, quote, an optimal zone of arousal in which people can function most effectively, end quote. So the window of tolerance is the zone or sweet place where we can most effectively self-regulate, take in learning, and cultivate mindfulness. Again, if a person feels safe, if they can discuss both comfortable and uncomfortable topics, and if they can take in new information, then they are in their window of tolerance. There's a story in Buddhism about Prince Siddhartha that relates to the window of tolerance. He's sitting on the bank of the Ganges, and he overhears a sitar teacher teaching. The teacher said, if the strings are too tight, the strings will break. If the strings are too loose, it won't play. Stress, especially high stress and traumatic stress, dysregulates us. It tends to put us outside of the window of tolerance. It's highly disorganizing. In fact, we can even feel that it's chaotic when we're out of the window of tolerance. Here is the neuroscience behind it. The window of tolerance is based on the functioning of the autonomic nervous system. There are two branches of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Tree Levin refers to the sympathetic nervous system as the accelerator and to the parasympathetic nervous system as the brake. This autonomic nervous system inside of us is constantly fluctuating and adjusting, constantly self-regulating between the accelerator and the brake. However, with high stress, traumatic stress, the speeding up and slowing down of the autonomic nervous system becomes unhealthy. How do we recognize when we're out of the window of tolerance, when we've become dysregulated? As we live through high stress or traumatic experience, we will have a burst of survival energy. In a moment of overwhelm or stress or threat, the accelerator comes online and gets slammed to the floor, which could result in the unhealthy emotional states of fight or flight. At times when we cannot flee or escape, when we are trapped and fight is unsuccessful, we become immobile. We apply the brake, resulting in the unhealthy emotional states of freeze or submit. These four dysregulated emotional states, fight or flight, freeze or submit, means you are outside of your window of tolerance. They are core experiences in high stress and traumatic stress. A more complex situation occurs when both the sympathetic and parasympathetic are activated nearly simultaneously. One person reported that she was at a crowded indoor music concert when a fire started. What she first experienced was a burst of energy and a rush to escape, to get out of there, the accelerator being slammed down. Then she realized that there were so many people that she could not run. She was trapped. So the brake got slammed on. One hallmark of post-traumatic stress energy is a high level of energy from sympathetic arousal, but then the brake or the parasympathetic system becomes awake, trapping that energy in the body. This creates dysregulated arousal when both the accelerator and the brake are slammed down together. Now, there's nothing wrong with arousal. Arousal is necessary to respond to the world around us and its demands. By virtue of the fact of you sitting here, we are all in some state of arousal or awareness. If you track your arousal, you will observe that it's fluctuating all the time. The person trapped in the concert was experiencing panic and a surge of too much energy called hyperarousal. They're out of the window of tolerance. Then she had the experience of being trapped and stunned and incapable of action. That's having too little arousal or hypoarousal. It's important to understand that arousal is a felt sensation. It's not just a concept. It's a felt sensation and a lived experience. Dysregulated arousal, or that place where the level of arousal is not under control, is a key indicator that someone could be struggling with high levels of stress or trauma. What are the nonverbal cues of dysregulated arousal? Let's look at hyperarousal first. Characteristics of being in the hyperarousal zone include the subjective feeling of increased sensation, heightened emotional reactivity, hypervigilance, intrusive imagery, and cognition goes offline. Cognition becomes disorganized. If you were looking at a person, you might observe agitation, hyperactivity, twitching, an exaggerated startle response. By contrast, characteristics of the hypoarousal zone include the subjective sense of numbness, a relative absence of sensation, a numbing or of emotions, again, disabled cognitive processing, and reduced physical movement. What you see, you might observe a pale skin tone, a fixed gaze, an extremely still posture. People often cycle between those two zones. In a moment of overwhelm or stress or threat, the accelerator comes online and gets slammed to the floor, resulting in fight or flight. And at times when we cannot flee or escape, when we are trapped and fight or flight is unsuccessful, we become immobile. We apply the brake, resulting in the unhealthy emotional states of freeze or submit. Our goal is to help people access their window of tolerance. If a person is in their window of tolerance, they can cultivate mindfulness. They're able to take in new information. Think about at a time that you were really upset or very, very anxious, and someone was trying to teach you something or show you something. Let's say you were trying to learn how to drive, and you kept making errors and you were getting more and more upset. And the person with you is trying to coerce you to accept some teaching. You're so dysregulated that you can't take in that information. So what can you do if you're out of your window of tolerance? You will notice in the notes there will be a diagram for you to refer to that contains the information that I've been talking about. But if you're out of the window of tolerance, one of the things you can do is simply open your eyes. If you're having intrusive thoughts or flashbacks, opening the eyes modulates your experience. You can change your posture. This is a very good thing to do because it helps you to feel in control of yourself. Stand up, feel your feet on the ground. Another thing you can do is walk around. Just get up and start walking around. Feel your feet on the ground. You can take slow in-breaths with your inhalation being very deep and full, and your exhalation being slow and a little bit longer than your inhalation. It's interesting that you can also drink a liquid that's different than your body temperature. For example, hot tea or iced water. That helps to ground you. You can simply decide to focus your senses, so you can name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can taste, and just 1 thing for your physical sensations. It's really important to understand the window of tolerance, either on your own for yourself or for clients that you're working with. The more that we know our own arousal level, the more powerful we are in whatever role we're in. So thank you very much for your attention. This concludes today's discussion and lecture.